Hey everyone, Waifu Belector here, the only fair human on Earth, and you know, it's been a while. It's been a little while. The T1000 is out and has been out for over a month at this point. And yet, there is still no word on the future of MK1 and Netherrealm. So, where is that news? What could be the holdup? And what will that news be when it is relayed to the public? That's what I want to talk about here today, so go ahead and get comfortable and let's talk about the influx state of MK and Netherrealm. As always, if you end up enjoying the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing, but for now, let's chat. Now, last time we spoke about good old Mortal Kombat, it was just before the release of the T1000, aka the final character in Kombat Pack 2. And of course, even then I figured they'd let the character breathe and be out in the wild long enough to let everyone who wants to purchase have that chance. I figured that would likely be a month or so, but we're now a little bit over a month from his release, and it almost feels like we're no closer than we were before. Of course, most of us expect the MK1 news to be about the end of content for MK1, but a more desperate few are hoping for a Kombat Pack 3, and we've heard nothing. And for reference, Kombat Pack 2 and the Chaos Reigns expansion were announced 4 days before the release of Kombat Pack 1's final character, Takeda. So if that trend were to need to hold true for more content, we would have gotten a Kombat Pack 3 trailer before the T1000 launch, but clearly that didn't happen. However, if there were a Kombat Pack 3, there probably isn't, but if there were one, I don't think it would necessarily need to follow this announcement flow. I mean, in Kombat Pack 2, we also got those first 3 characters on the same day, Sector, Cyrax, and Noob, and that's not something that happened with Kombat Pack 1, so things can change and shift up a little. But again, like I said, there probably isn't a Kombat Pack 3, so I wouldn't hold my breath. And when you check socials and stuff, Ed Boon is on Twitter, he's on Threads, and he's asking about MK1, he's asking about the franchise in general, he's doing everything except for providing news. Is he just curious? Is he just having some fun? Or is this for a reason? Well, his asking about which character in MK1 could use some love is clearly for a reason, and honestly, it feels like it doesn't bode well for those hoping that MK1 continues, because whatever characters they settle on might just be receiving the most attention in a farewell update. But who's really to say? I'm just speculating, I want to remind everyone of that. But anyway, even though it's been just over a month since the T1000 released and we've heard nothing, we might have yet another month to wait. And I'll explain why I think this. And of course we could get this news earlier, it could be tomorrow for all we know, but in another month or so, in June, it's going to be Summer Game Fest, which naturally means lots of game announcements. Now, like I said, we could hear something sooner than that, but if all throughout May we hear nothing, then it's very likely that we will get what we've been waiting for at Summer Game Fest. And here's the thing, if that happens, if they wait until Summer Game Fest, I don't think a trailer for a big game ending patch necessarily warrants that alone. So I either think it would be a Kombat Pack 3 trailer, or more likely, a farewell patch trailer and a teaser or CG reveal of the next project. And I know when we go back in time and we look at something like the transition from Injustice 2 to MK11, the gap between Injustice's final character and MK11's announcement is about 10 months. And I'm not using MK11 to MK1 as an example because MK1's development was notoriously troubled. But the 10 months from ending to announcement between Injustice 2 and MK11 would be very different than just 2 months from MK1 to whatever's next, if it did pop up at Summer Games Fest. So how can I think that we'd get an announcement at Summer Games Fest? Well, it's simple. Shit's changed. MK1 is a very unorthodox Mortal Kombat game in terms of development and content scheduling, both because of initial troubled development and negative reception. Nothing about drops for this game have really gone the way things should, and I'd wager that the same could be true of the end of the game as well. Then Take that in tandem with the fact that people just love to announce games that don't come out for 5, 10, 100 years. That's just what happens and no one cares. So who would even notice if Netherrealm pushed up an announcement 8 months from where it would usually be, and then you end up waiting 12 months for the game to release instead of 4? That's all fine, that's all normal. Waiting a year for a game is a picnic in a sea of 2027 and 28 game announcements. So I really don't think this is too far-fetched, although I am just speculating. But then we're still left to wonder, what is the new game, project, or whatever? Well, obviously, we all assume it's either a new MK or Injustice. That's where the smart money is. But which should it be? Listen, personally, I want it to be Injustice 3. But more than that, I also just believe that it should be. I think it's too soon for Netherrealm to go right back at it with a third MK in a row, this time trying to dig themselves out of the MK1 hole. It just feels too soon, especially alongside the parent company Warner Bros. Or Warner Bros. Discovery, whatever the fuck. They are similarly digging themselves out of a hole. So just go with something where the stakes aren't quite as big for a second. Go with Injustice 3. And you've got to think, if the narrative I've spun in the past is true, if they were working on Injustice 3 and all that funky stuff happened where they weren't sure they'd have the rights cause they might be sold off, and so they quickly switched to MK1 and rushed it out the door, if that's true, if that's what happened, then how much work for Injustice 3 has already been done? How much conceptualizing and story work was already ready to go? How many assets or character models might they have already cooked up? That could explain the pushed up announcement that we may or may not get at Summer Game Fest. And I know I'm doing an insane amount of speculating in this video, but that's what we're here for. This is where the fun is. This is what my brain does with the things I enjoy. And hey, you know what? I'm even holding out a sliver of hope that we might get proof that we are in the greatest timeline, and that the next game is a MK vs DC sequel. That would truly be the greatest timeline. But also, here's a little hope for people desperately hoping for Kombat Pack 3. And I'm only gonna say this because if for some reason it does happen, I want there to be proof that I thought it. So here it goes. I can imagine a world where this delayed announcement is not simply Kombat Pack 3, but some huge game overhaul and update. Visual enhancements, gameplay changes, cameo-less game mode, of course new Kombat Pack, and new story expansion. And in my head, in this fictional universe where this is real, this new story expansion will somehow see us shift back to the original MK timeline and erase the Liu Kang era. And it'll be called MK12, because they're gonna play into the idea of it being MK2 after 1, but by placing the 2 right after the 1 in the title card, so it then becomes 12. So it'll kind of be a double entendre title update, where it's MK2, but it's MK12, you know? Okay, I'm speculation spiraling, I'm sorry, but I had to say it. Obviously, none of that stuff is gonna happen, but I had to have the thought recorded. So enough of my nonsense, you've heard my thoughts, way too many of them in fact, and now we'll just have to wait and see what really happens. And like I said, you heard my thoughts, but now tell me yours, tell me what you think in the comments, and don't just comment, MK trash, MK cooked, third negative bot response. Try to put a shred of effort into the thought. You know, what do you want Netherrealm's next game to be? Are you hoping for Kombat Pack 3? Would you be happy either way? Whatever the thought, go ahead and drop it in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing if you're just a fan of games in general. My channel is pretty much just games in general. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I am Waifu Belector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai, and I'm waiting for MK news. Goodbye.